Okay, so guys, I hope you can hear me now. Thank you so much. You see, that's the beauty of thank you so much. That's the beauty of you guys commenting your comments on the comment section. So you see, I wouldn't have known. I would have just been firing and be going. Okay, so I hope you can hear me now. Thank you so much. Ayogu Dokas, God bless you. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you for letting me know. Okay, okay, thank. So, like I said, this is what we are going to be learning how to do tonight. So you can see this is what we are going to cut. So this particular that we're cutting today, within the week, we're going to sew this one. So we're going to do the stitching part. We're going to sew it on Friday this week by God's grace. We're going to I will show you guys how to stitch it with everything about this blouse, okay? So I might change some little things on it, like this scallop neckline. I really don't like it. I want mine to just be straight. On this pattern, we're going to do the scallop neckline, okay? So that is that. So now let's get started straight into our tutorial tonight, okay? All right. So the first thing we're going to do, for those of you that have been following me, I normally like to draft the back pattern first. It's not for so that is me. I don't know. I draft the back pattern. It will help me to like relax and then make any adjustment that I need to make before I come to the front piece. So in drafting the back, it shoulder. So we're going to mark our first line. So that line is going to serve as our line, which is going to be the shoulder line. We're going to cut it off. So for this dressing, I'll show you how to cut it. If you now and then we'll now remove the parts, so it will now become this off shoulder. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, we want to add our bust point. So I'll use 10 inches for my bust point, and then I'll use 13 inches for the under bust. So for the waist, for my waist, I'm going to use 16 waist. That's my belly button. And then for the length of the blouse, I am going to use 23 inches. Okay. So the front piece is going to be a little bit longer. So all of those are going to connect them now. So I'll just connect them this way. So that's my um hem. So that part, this one is my waist, and then this is my under bust, and then this is my bust. Okay. So these are all of the lines that I need. So this is our shoulder, our bust point, under bust, and then the full length. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, so the measurement that we're making use of our shoulder, we're using 14. Our bust is 36. Our under bust is 30. The waist is 34. And then the hem, we'll use 40 inches. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do now, first we're going to mark our shoulder measurement. So let me know, okay, let me know where you're watching me from. You guys should please like the video. I would appreciate that. Okay, thank you. So I'll come to this point. I'll divide my shoulder measurement. So this one will divide this one into by 2. Do you understand? And then every other measurement we're dividing by 4. Just watch for those of you. So the shoulder measurement, you divide that into 2. So 14, you divide it into 2, you are going to have 7. You add half of an inch to it, you mark it that way. And then from that point where you mark, you come down by 1 inch. For those of you that have been following me on my live classes, by now you guys should know, you guys will be good. Let me say it, yes, you will be good in pattern drafting. You find out that pattern drafting, there's no really big deal about it. Do you understand? So that is why I made it that all of my live streams in the evening, I'm going to be doing pattern. And then since people said, so since someone's sewing part, so within the week I'll be coming in and then be doing some sewing parts. Okay, so that's that. So from this point, we'll mark our armhole measurement. Somebody was asking me about armhole. How do you get your perfect armhole? You understand? Somebody asked that question this afternoon. So the way that I normally get my perfect armhole, that's me. I normally take my tape. You understand? So I take my tape like this. I will measure around my armhole. You understand? Like this. I'll measure round the armhole. just measure around my armpit area like this, okay? But if I'm making a dress for a client, that is, so you can see here, this is 17. If I making a dress for a client that is not around, what I normally do, if the person's boss is 40, I at times, let me just say it the way it is. At times, if the bust is from 40, all this bust 40 upward, I normally use like 9 inches. That's what I will use to hit my armhole. That's what I will use to like come down. But at the end of time, measuring and trimming the armhole, well, that's when you curve out the armhole. When you measure it, it's going to be like maybe 12. You understand? So that one you have to be very technical for you to achieve it. So like I was promising the person today that I'll come up one of these days and really show you guys how to do armhole. You understand? Okay, so for this now, I am using 17. So 17, I'll divide that into two. So it has gotten truncated. So I'll divide that into two. So I'm going to mark 8 inches there, and then I will come down. I'll just come down like this, and then I'll just mark it this way, okay? And then from the point that I came, I'll just mark around. I'll just create a curve. That curve is going to be for my armhole. So the next thing I want to do now, I want to add all of these measurements to this piece. And then bust is 36. So I'll come to this bust line, I'll mark 36, divide by 4, which is 9. And then I'll add 1 inch, because I'll take out a 1 inch, that I'll add it, and then add allowance to my piece, okay? And then I'll come to the under bust, which is 30. I'll divide 30 into 4. I'll have 7.5. I'll add 1 inch allowance, 8.5, and then add 2 inches, 9.5, 10.5. I'll mark it that way. And then I'll come to this point here, which is my waist. That is 34. I'll divide that into 4. I'll mark it here, and then I'll add the 1 inch allowance, and then add 2 inches sewing. So that's for the waist. And then for the down part, which is the hem, I'm going to come like this. I'll divide 40 into 4. I'll mark 10. I'll add 1 inch as our allowance. Sorry, as our dart. So the dart I'll take for back is 1 inch. I'll mark that, and then I'll add 2 inches for my allowance. So that one is optional. So I'm done. I'm going to connect all of these lines together. Can you see the way I'm placing my tape? I mean, like this. I'll just place my tape because I need to take this at an angle. I need this angle to hit with this angle. So that is why I'm going to mark it like this. Can you see? After marking it like this, the next thing I am going to mark this like this, okay? And then I'll just take this to create that. Can you see how beautiful this pattern looks already? So the next thing you want to do now, you want to take out your dart. So for the dart, you're going to measure from one nipple to another, which is called a bust span, okay? Professionally, like I always say. So for that, I'm going to use 8 inches, because this particular dress, I told you, I said I'm going to sew it. So I'll use my exact measurement. So I'll use 4 inches. So I'm marking that 4 inches. So the bust span, that's the nipple to nipple, is 8 inches. So I am marking it all across on the line. After marking it across on the line, I'm going to take my ruler like this, and then I will mark it straight. Can you see? So now we want to take out that 1 inch dart. You remember that 1 inch that we added to it? We need to take it out as the dart. So you come to your waist side. You're going to divide that 1 inch into two. So you mark half inch to the right, and then half inch to the left, okay? So when you mark it that way, you are going to take this like this, and then you're going to connect it. Can you see the way I came? From here, you hit this point, and then from this point, you're going to hit this point, okay? So you just, you don't need to take out anything from the hip part. So we're just taking out from the waist, and then you don't need to take out anything from the bust part also. So that is why up. If you notice, you can see that from my under bust line, I came up, like you can come up by 1 inch or 1.5 inch, and then it from that point. Okay, so you can see, so you, from that point, you mark, you just target that 1 inch, and then you now bend it to this side. Or can you see? So you hit it this way, can see. So you see our dart, we have taken out a beautiful piece of dart from our pattern. So the next to do now if you want to snatch this waistline, let me just show you guys. I've been doing this. If you want to snatch the waistline, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to come to this part, I'll check what I have here, and then I'll divide this into two. I'm not going to be snatching it, but I just want to teach you people how to do it. I'll divide it into two, and then I'm going to mark it here like this, and then from that point I am going to just give a beautiful line. Like basically snatching is like you taking out an extra dart. Okay, so if I want to do this and then I want to take out another 1 inch from my waistline, in case I want to I want to use loops or corset, so that is this. But I am not, I think my own, I'm going to be adding zip, so I'm just showing you guys how to do it. This is not necessary. Okay, so this is half inch and then another half inch. So basically I'm taking out another extra inch from this piece. Okay, so like adding an extra dart. So that is what I am doing. So like I said, this is really not necessary. I'm going to be adding a zip my own. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do now, I want to cut out the back. So the back neckline is going to be straight, and my back, I don't want my back to start from this point, so I'm going to come up. I want my back, I want it to be high. I don't really like it to be too deep, open body. Normally, you can come up by 1.5 inch. Do you understand? So let me use my pencil. Come up by 1 inch, ideally. You understand? Or you can use your chest line measurement. So your chest line is basically that line where your bust, where your armhole got to. So you can use that line. So it depends on you. For mine, I want it to be a little bit higher. So I'm going to come to those points like this. From my bust point line, I'm going to come up by 2 inches. Why am I doing that? I don't want my body to be open. You understand? I don't want the back, everything to be too open. So that is why I am doing that. So I'll just mark it that way, and then I am going to connect it. Okay, so that is why I am doing that. I'll connect it. So I'm using 2 inches. I came up by 2 inches. You can come up by 2.5, and then remember this line, that leg, you're going to extend it. Okay, so that is that. So the next thing, we are done now for the back. So for the back, for the waist of the back, we are going to mark it. Okay, so I'm going to come up with like 2 inches. Most time I'm working with patterns like this, I like to be very careful. I don't like to do all of the trimmings on my pattern. So when I sew, I will have allowance, and then I will still trim with my hands. So that is why I'm coming up. So I could go up more than 2 inches, but I just want to make it okay. So I come 2 inches. So that 2 inches here is what I am going to do. I'm going to take my pattern curve this way, and then I'm going to curve that line. Can you see what I am doing? So I'll curve that line like this. So you can see how beautiful my pattern looks already. So now I'm to cut this off. So like I said I am sewing this piece. Okay, so when I come to this part, I'm going to cut it like this. Can you see? Even as I'm cutting, I still added small allowance to it, because I don't want my neckline to be too open. So this part, this is the part where my zip is going to be. I'm going to put a notch here. I'm going to put a notch, and then I'm going to cut my dart open. You can cut this open, and then this, I am just going to give this a beautiful curve at that down point. Okay, so you can see how my back piece is looking. So the next thing I am going to do now, thank you. If you're just joining, you're welcome. Let me see in case we have a question. So kindly recap on how the dart on the under is derived for the front pattern. Okay, no problem. I'll do that. Definitely, I'll do that. Right, so now we're going over to the front pattern. Okay, so let me see in case there are some questions. I'm going to come back and answer them. But that if you have questions Now you can just say it as we are on so that I can answer, okay? So now we're going over to the front pattern. So like I said, we're going to be doing the stitching of this particular style, and we're going to sew it on Friday by God's grace. I'll show you guys how to sew it in the afternoon. The live class is going to be by 1 p.m. by God's grace. That's when I pray that the work is not uh let me just say it's okay. So now the next thing we're going to do now, we want to draft our front piece, okay? So we're going to take a start line. This is going to be our start line, which is going to serve as our shoulder line, okay? And then from that start line, I need to take my bust point, which is 4 points. And then for this, I'm making use of 10 inches for that point. And then from that point, I'm taking an under bust point, which is 13. And then from my under bust, I'm taking 16 inches for my waist. And then I'll take 4 inches for the hem. If you notice the front hem, the length of the front, I use for the back, I use 23 inches. If though I am not adding a bust dart to this, okay? I'm not adding a bust dart, but if you notice, I need the front pattern to be longer than the back, so I'll be able to achieve that beautiful stylish triangle hem, okay? One-sided triangle. So I am marking all of my lines like this. I'm just like connecting them, and then so now let's label them. This is our bust point, our under bust. This is our waist, and then this is the hem or the full length of the blouse, okay? So the next thing I am going to do, okay, okay, okay. So the next thing I'm going to do, we're going to start marking all of our measurements immediately. So like we said, the bust was 36, the under bust 30, the waist is 34, and then the hem we're using 40. So these are all the measurements. So for the shoulder measurement, even though it is an off shoulder, you saw the way I cut off that part now and then it turned to an off shoulder. So I'm going to come. So from that point, the network. So from I'll measure and mark 7 inches, which is for my shoulder. The shoulder is 15. Sorry, it's 14, which is 7, and then I'll add half of an inch to it. And then from that half inch, I am going to come down by 1 inch. So that 1 inch is going to serve as my shoulder slant. So that is why I came down from that point. So I'll connect that to the shoulder line that way, okay? So after connecting it to the shoulder line that way, the next thing we want to do now, we want to mark our armhole. So I in the front part and the back pattern, I explained about the armhole, okay? So for the armhole part, for your dresses, what I normally do, if the client is available, as I'm measuring them, I normally measure their armhole, okay? I normally measure their armhole. I'll take my tape and then take it around like this, and then I would measure, making sure that it is not tight. Can you see? This is what I normally do, because if you see those Italian designers, when they are making those dresses, those suits, they normally measure the client to measure the armhole round, okay? So when I measure that round, most times somebody was asking a question that even if she uses 8 inches, that the armhole, that's the armpit area, is still going to be tight. Yes, it's going to be tight if you don't know how to shape your armhole. You need to know how to shape your armhole, and that shaping of armhole, most times before you fix your sleeves, that is when you do it. You need to learn it. I mean, I thank God, as in God helped me. Like that first time when I started sewing, I was having a little bit of issues until it now became very clear. So ever since then, I could really shape my armhole and not have any issues. Okay. So back to what I was saying. So when you measure it that way, you're going to divide that measurement into two, and then you're going to place it that way. You're going to place it here. So in case you don't want to do that, you want to use the standard measurement, you're going to divide your bust circumference into 4, into 6, and then you add 1.5. But that particular one, I usually don't use it. I normally prefer to measure round. And then if it is a client that is not on ground, that is not available, if the bust, if the person's bust is from bust 40 and above, I normally use 9 inches as my own standard measurement for the armhole. These are things I've used and it has worked perfectly for me. You are still going to still shape the armhole. Do you understand? So you must shape it when you are fixing the sleeve. Okay. So from that point, I'm going to mark 8 inches because my own it was 16 or 16 or 17 thereabout, but I'll just use 16, and then I'll mark it this way because I don't really need the armhole. I'll mark it like this, and then I will connect this with a straight ruler like this. Okay, so when I connect this with a straight ruler, the next thing, you are going to check this point. You check half of what you have. You're going to come out by like quarter of an inch. Okay, and then from that point you are going to create a curve out like this, and then that curve you are going to that's you're going to create a line out, and then you will just connect that into this point. So this will give you a beautiful armhole. So this was what we were talking about. When even when you cut this, when you want to when you're before you fix your sleeve. Okay, I think I have a tutorial that I'm going to be doing. That one is normal tutorial. I'm going to be showing you guys. I don't mind. Maybe I'll use that armhole area to do a live stream for you guys to see or something. I'll just try. Okay. So I'll show you guys how to. Yes, that dress has a, I think it's going to have a small sleeve. But if it is a big sleeve, you really don't need, once you cut it, you can just fix it to still be okay. So the next thing, let's take out our bust pan. So for the bust pan, I'm using 8 inches. So that 8 inches, I'm just marking it across all of my lines. So I divide that 8 inches, sorry, I divide that 8 inches into two. That 8 inches, that's my nipple to nipple, which is the bust pan. I'll divide that into two, and then I have 4 inches. So that 4 inches, I'm going to mark that 4 inches on all the lines, and then I'm going to rule it this way. Okay, so after everything, the next thing I am going to do, so this is our chest line. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do now, we want to mark out our dart. So for the dart, depends on how busty you want that, depends on how curved you want your bustier to be. So once for this, I'm going to use 3 inches for my dart. You understand? Because I want my bust, I want it to be really, I want it to come out very well. So I'm going to come to my under bust side. That 3 inches, I'm going to divide it. You can decide to divide it one and a half, one and a half, but mine, I want this cup side, I want it to be big. You understand? So I'm going to use 2 inches on one side like this, and then I'll use 1 inch on this side. Okay. So, and then I'm going to connect it down. I'll mark it down like this, and then this one also I'll mark down. So the next thing I want to do now, this point, I want to connect this point to my bust point. So I'll use my curve. I'll use this curve on my ruler to do that, to achieve a beautiful curve. Can you see how beautiful? The next thing, I'm going to take this one, I'll turn it. I need to create another curve on this side also, and then I am going to create that curve like this. Okay, so after creating the curve like this, the next thing I want to do now, if I leave this dress like this, my boobs are going to be showing on top. Okay, which by the way I really don't want. So I'm going to, you remember my back pattern, you remember I went up by 2 inches. So this is my front pattern. So normally you would go up, as in ideally you can use just 1.5 inch, you can go up by 1.